I'm Tom, and I was right about Martin Bakole. And I don't want this to be a video that comes across as me slagging him off or shitting on him, because it's absolutely not the case. I really rate Martin Bakole. And I think he's still got time left. I think he's got the ability left as well and potential. But I think the reality of it is, and it's weird, boxing is the only sport that seems to massively overrate people based off of a few things. It's strange. I don't really see it in many other sports where you'll have one good performance, two good performances, and suddenly you're the best thing since sliced bread. I guess it's because of promoters, right? I guess like Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, whoever it is, does their job and makes them really, really hyped. But I look at it like Dubois, and like, just to quickly run down my opinion on Dubois, and I know this is a very hot take, but this is kind of my point. You got Dubois, who lost to Usyk and quit because of a jab. Right, that's what happened. He got bullied around the ring. Bearing in mind, he fought Usyk in Poland when it was chucking it down with rain, so the canvas was extremely wet and he could barely move. Usyk still managed to dance rings around him for 11 rounds and eventually got him to quit off of a jab. He then went on to fight Jarrell Miller, an overweight Jarrell Miller who, was unfit, overweight, nearly got stopped by him until his dad came and shouted at him and managed to get the win. Then he fought Hrgovic, who he couldn't answer that right hand. He beat Hrgovic off of a cut stoppage. Hrgovic, who clearly didn't take it very seriously, and he had no answer for that right hand. He then rolled over AJ. Granted, rolled over AJ in a way that no one ever has or had done. But he fought the worst AJ I've ever seen. An AJ that threw nothing back. And even when AJ was out on his feet and finally threw something back, he wobbled Dubois. And then suddenly he's now the best, the number one contender. Should have beaten Dubois in the first. It should have beaten Usyk in the first fight. It was a low blow. It's like we're ignoring everything here. I think Bakole's a perfect example of that. I thought Bakole would beat Anderson. Anderson was favourite to win that. Everyone was picking Anderson to beat Bakole. I said I think Bakole will beat Anderson. A few reasons for it. I said Bakole's bigger, harder hitter, a good boxer. I think he's good, and I don't really rate Anderson. Anderson, because he's an American heavyweight, has a lot of stock put into him in the same way Wilder did. But I think Bakole will beat him, and Bakole then did. I then, going forward, basically got all the predictions right up into the Parker fight. Thought he'd lose to Parker. He did, pretty much how I said he would. And then going into this, he was the favourite to beat Efe Ajagba. And I'm just looking at the fight going, and this is no slagging off Martin Bakole, but I was thinking, how is he favourite to win this? I don't really understand. It was only as close as it was because Ajagba let it be. Ajagba didn't have an overly impressive performance. He got a few rounds, lead, a few bit of a head start, and then just let Bakole back into the fight for some reason, trying to cruise his way to victory. But that was his own doing. It wasn't because of how good Bakole was being. I just didn't understand how people, you could think Bakole's going to win the fight. And I think ultimately it's because it's a weird thing, boxing, and the heavyweight division for a long time has been the biggest guy wins. That's why George Foreman, that people compare Martin Bakole to, seem to have done really well. They're the big guys, right? But actually nowadays we're not really saying that. The champion Usyk is a smaller guy. Parker, smaller guy. Kabayel, smaller guy. Atama, whilst he can punch, isn't a huge heavyweight. We're seeing a change where, Zhang, a 280-pound unit, we now know how to beat him. And people do it, well, I say people do it relatively easily. They don't, right? But Kabayel did it easily. Parker did it with relative comfort. On the flip side to that, Parker versus Bakole, again, Bakole just stands in front of you, super, super square on, and if he can't knock you out, there's not much he's got left, he's not got much else to his arsenal. So Parker just beat him. Ajagba, the same thing, and that's what we're saying, is you don't have to be the biggest guy to win. And it's strange that boxing has that thing where they'll fixate on a couple of victories, not looking at it kind of the actuality, is that the word? I don't know, the actuality of the fight we're seeing. And in actual fact, someone like Ajagba, someone like Parker, who can box, who can move, and Usyk, and these guys can't, they're not exactly light punchers. They're still going to hurt when they whack you. That's what we're going to see. Boxing's a 12-round sport, and look, in the heavyweight division, the excitement of it is, yes, any punch can get you out of there, but the reality of it is, when you can avoid those punches, when you can make them miss and then make them pay, like Parker can, like Kabayel can, like Usyk can, that's usually who it's gonna favour. I've said this for a long time. Yes, a good big man beats a good small man, but there is a point of diminishing returns, and we are seeing that. It's not just people saying, "Oh, it's because he's 300 pounds, he's overweight." It's not just that he's overweight. He is overweight, and it's not helping. But it's not just that he's overweight. He's just too big. There's a point of diminishing returns. Usyk's at that sweet spot. That's 6'3", 6'4", 220 to 240 pound max, I'd say. 250 maybe the limit. Anything past that, obviously it depends on your size. I'm not saying that Bam or Nick Ball should go and be 250 pounds. But when that's that sweet point, 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", 220, 240, at most 250. Anything after that is diminishing returns. You're slightly too tall. You're slightly too heavy. But if you can get that for me is the perfect heavyweight. 6'3", 6'4", 230, 240. That's the sweet spot, I think, with anything after that is diminishing returns. And that's what we're seeing. And people just start saying, Fury's didn't take, if he didn't abuse his body when he was younger. And Zhang, if he was a bit fitter, and well, yeah, okay, and Bakole took it serious, maybe, but the reason why they suffer these problems is because there's a point of diminishing returns, and we're seeing that. If you're a 6'3", 6'4" boxer, Joseph Parker, Alexander Usyk, Kabayel, in Moses Tama's case, Moses Tama, he can also just wallop, but you can box and you can move, you're going to dance around these big guys, and that's what we're seeing. That is what we're seeing. And that's why I was right about Bakole, and it's not me slagging him off, it's just the way the heavyweight division is, and people don't really seem to accept it. But that's my thought on everything, people. You let me know your thoughts on all of what I just said in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like, a comment, subscribe, as always, people. You know how all this stuff works. Peace.